That's not too bad. That's essentially on time. You know what we need to do? We need to. Do you watch Redacted?
Yeah. Hello. We're pretty much on time.
Oh.
Well, we should say hi. Yeah, we're live. We're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of MRAdio, the podcast for men's rights in the UK, and our hosts are the lovely Elizabeth Hobson. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, all, or wherever you are in the world, whatever is appropriate. I'm Elizabeth Hobson, and I am currently a trustee for the Parity charity, who campaign for equal rights and treatment for men and women.
Great to have you. And my name is Philip Tanser. I'm the founder of GenderParityUK, a men's rights organization here in the UK. So we've got four wonderful topics tonight for you guys. But if you have any suggestions, any questions, please write a comment in the live stream, in the chat. So I'm gonna dive right into our first topic. And that is, let me share the screen. So, police hunt, woman after man is sexually assaulted on Euston Tube escalator. The British Transport Police looking for a woman after sexual assault at Euston Station. Suspect was with a friend when alleged attack happened at 9 p.m. last Friday. The police are hunting for a woman after a man was sexually assaulted on an escalator at Euston Tube Station last night, blah, blah, blah. The man was going up an escalator when a woman tried to link arms with him, then sexually assaulted him after he tried to get away from her, police said. I don't have to read the whole article. That is the woman in question. There's another photo, a little bit better, this one. And I would actually like to go straight into the comment section because that is quite interesting and quite telling. Can you see that, Elizabeth?
I can see that, yeah. I've just learned for our second stream that I can make this bigger, because last time it was really little on my screen and I was like squinting to try and read it, but I can read it quite easily now.
Okay, that's brilliant. So I'm just going to read out some of the comments, and then I'm interested in your opinion, and we can talk about this a little bit. So first comment is, not sure what the definition is of a sexual assault these days. Sounds like a couple of stupid drunk women being a bit outrageous. I'm not saying that what they did was okay, but does it merit a nationwide woman hunt? And the replies to that, one reply was yes, exclamation mark. Another reply was, bet it was just a pat on the backside too.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments were, brave man to come forward and report it. Don't be ashamed to speak out. A comment to that was, a woman would be laughed at if she reported it. Other comments were, she'll get away with 100 fine. Man would be locked up.
Mm-hmm.
A comment to that was, everyone here missing the point. If a man is prosecuted, he will get a much worse penalty. That is what is wrong with the system. Another person said, no woman would even bother to report it. Yeah, so these are...
She'd be too busy on TikTok trying to get hearts for her tale of woe. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the what the sexual assault is here that's being described, and so we are limited as to conclusions we can draw. I do have some sympathy with the person who asked, or suggested that he really doesn't know what the definition of a sexual assault is. these days. And I don't think that it's progress for us as a society to be moving towards reaching out to authority figures to get involved whenever we're, offended in public, basically. I would prefer us as a society to be able to look after ourselves. On the other hand, there are sex disparities in how seriously these incidents are taken. So,
I fully agree. I think that minor instances of bad behavior are now immediately criminalized. On the other hand, according to statistics, 95 or something or 97% of instances of sexual assault are perpetrated by men, and we know that's bullshit. That's wrong. I have been sexually assaulted by women 11 times since I moved here. So and I barely go out, and I've been pretty much sexually assaulted once every year. And I think that aggressive sexual behavior from women is very common here in the UK. Why are you laughing?
No, it was just like, it was the once a year thing. Like, it kind of like made me imagine it was like, your annual pilgrimage to be assaulted. Sorry. But I mean, I do.
No, it's fine.
There is like there's a perverse problem that has arisen, I think, in our country, whereby we have focused so hard on eliminating bad behavior from men towards women. And I mean, that has been positive in many ways. There is significantly less violence visited upon women in domestic settings all the time. But at the same time as that's been moving in one direction, there has been absolutely no condemnation of women's violence or their bad behavior towards men. And, actually, it is increasingly, I don't know, maybe it's not increasingly actually, but it certainly remains played for laughs in media. And certainly what is increasing is the sort of feminist legitimization of it. On, like, we're not even talking about comedy here. We're talking about feminists saying that it is morally righteous to treat men badly, to commit random acts of violence and aggression towards men, because whether or not this individual man is particularly guilty of any specific crime, he has the original sin of malehood, so I suppose that if we are going to be ridiculous about men's behavior towards women, and we are going to go around prosecuting men for wolf whistling or telling women that they look hot on LinkedIn or something, then it would probably be better to do the same with women. But I'd rather we did not prosecute or dogpile either of the sexes for essentially innocuous behavior, because not only is it unjust to the people who are who suffer consequences that are disproportionate, but actually it's weakening for the alleged victims. It's like, someone slapped your ass, forget about it. you know, you're not a victim, you're cool, like there's nothing wrong with you, you can go and enjoy your life, is a much better message, I think, and a much more empowering message, whether to men or women, than, oh my God, someone touched you without consent. It's like, you know, you are spoiled for the rest of your life. And
As a man, I would say when a woman does something like that, I really do feel quite violated. But I feel violated because the woman, I'm not violated necessarily by the woman, but by society, because of the double standard, because I cannot even push her away. It happened to me quite often in public settings, and if I would have pushed the woman away, then guys would have beaten me up.
yeah.
Or yeah, so, and I can't usually, like, you can't go to a bouncer, let's say, or some security guy, because they will often laugh, or
Oh,
they
they'll
will
tell you
just
to
think,
leave.
they make fun. Exactly.
Yeah.
Same with the police. Funny enough, I would say that it's usually women that take it more seriously. So if you go to a female bouncer or to a female police officer, they will usually take it more seriously when you go to a male, but that's a generalization. If you go to a man, he will probably say, come on, it's not a big deal. Do you really want to get this woman into trouble? and and I think many men feel like that. Many men would say, oh, I can't report that, I don't want to get this girl into trouble. I feel like that because it's, in some ways, it's usually drunk
Yeah.
people, drunk women, and society says it's okay to do it. So
Mhm.
getting a girl into trouble because society tells them it's okay to do that, I don't know. I feel very bad about calling the police on somebody who does something that is permitted by society.
Mm.
But on the other hand, the only way to change these laws is to use them just as much as the other side. It's the same with the hate crime legislation. I think the best thing to go against the hate crime legislation is, just use it against the feminists, use it against black nationalists, and so on. Because at one point the police going to say, look, this is getting ridiculous, we can't do that anymore, let's get rid of the hate crime legislation.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be lovely. I don't know if that would happen. I think that we are probably stuck with it, you know, and I have my utopian ideal of going back to, you know, my youth when we had more of a sort of dignity approach where it was just like you dealt with stuff like, you know, on your own as far as
Yeah.
possible. But I realistically don't think, you know, as a society and legislatively, we are going to go back to that. So, given the situation that we have, what is the best thing to do? And yeah, I think perhaps it is to try and get these this legislation um, to be executed in an even-handed way. Um, you know, and I think there is, you know, like you mentioned, a lot of, and, you know, certainly that case that we've just looked at, you know, it looks like this is some drunk bird, you know, and this is what happens, you know, when young people are out on Friday and Saturday night. They get a bit drunk and a bit handsy and whatever. But actually, I think there is um, a more pernicious kind of impact when, if we are tolerating bad behavior from women towards men, and, you know, we're giving men a blanket message that you can never touch a woman, you can never touch a woman, you can't push her away, you can't shout at her, you know, whatever she does, you have to just accept it like a man and whatever, you know, then you're bringing these two people who have these different experiences of how their behavior is responded to. And if you have them within a home, and if there is conflict, then you know, potentially have women who expect their men to be able to take a beating and to be able to take, you know, them shouting at them whenever. And you have these men who are indoctrinated into thinking that they can never push back, they can never push back, they can never push back. And that is awful. But not only is it awful, but it does leave people like these couples at risk of one day, you know, a woman's aggression pushing that man too far, and he stops being able to control himself and strikes out. And, you know, it is like the feminists go on about this battered wife syndrome, and they do it to a ridiculous extent. You know, they say that, well, a woman who has divorced her husband 10 years ago and they live apart, and she drives around to his house with a hammer in her car and attacks him and kills him, you know, it's battered wife syndrome. You know, that is absurd. But in situations where someone is living with another person who is physically or mentally torturing them for years, there is a danger of them, like the victim, snapping one day. And, you know, if it's a man who is physically significantly stronger, then one instance when he loses control momentarily can be potentially life-threatening to the woman who has been driving him to it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think this is not just on a personal level, but also on a societal level, where if you keep pushing boys and men and keep abusing them, at one point, people will become more and more angry, and when that happens, they people like Andrew Tate will be the moderate ones, and the peaceful ones compared to the people that maybe the next generation of man's going to listen to. So yeah, don't push men into a corner because at men and women to just respect each other and get on well. And I want to see the laws being applied equally to both of them.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to move on to the next topic, which is a topic that you made me aware of, and that is a movie that is being shared, that is being shown at a
I think
Hello,
have I
Elizabeth?
lost your audio, Philip? Sorry, I think I lost your audio for a moment there.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can now hear you.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if anyone listening might have seen an interview that Jordan Peterson conducted with the filmmaker. He's called Stephen J. Shaw, and he's been in data analytics for corporations for quite a few years. And he went back to study to keep his skills up, and happened on his course to notice unexpected figures with regards to birth rates, which intrigued him. So the film essentially covers the looming potential threats of shrinking populations, or aging populations indeed, which is quite a significant issue as part of that. And he also, I think, will be looking at some of the case studies. Actually, there was a good article about this in the National Geographic a couple of months back that has some really moving pictures from a Japanese village where there are only old people now. and not many of them, but you know, at one point the village was full of human beings. And what the old people have taken to doing is they've got all these dolls. They're like rag dolls that they make, and so there's like a school, and it's filled with these little dolls sat at the desk, and the only actual human being employee is the cleaner, and she goes and maintains it all, but the whole village is full of these kind of like ghost dolls, you know. So it's, you know, sad on that level. But yeah, there's case studies. Perhaps he'll visit there in the film. And also he talks to a lot of women about the choices that they've made in their lives, you know, who've ended up childless, and they didn't necessarily plan to do that, and they didn't want to do that, and now they wish they hadn't done that. But you know, they were sold messages from feminists that they needed to go out and conquer the business world before they even thought about having children. And you know, they go and they have their careers and often find them not quite as fulfilling as they were supposed to be, I imagine. And yeah, they run out of time. So
Have you seen the movie already?
no, I haven't seen it
You
yet.
haven't seen. Okay, but there will be a screening. But there will be a screening soon at. Is it called St. John's College? Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Which
Yeah.
which city is that?
It's Cambridge.
In Cambridge. Oh, okay, Cambridge. Okay,
Yeah.
and we're looking at an article here that says students plan protest against quote unquote anti-feminist documentary screening, and down here we read students are planning to protest the screening of Birth Gap, Childless World, a documentary which blames the pitfall of feminism and the modern dating world for the planet's collapsing birth rate. The screening, hosted by a student, will be taking place at St. John's College on the 20th of May. In an email sent out via the School of Biological Sciences mailing list, the host advertised that the screening would be followed by a Q&A with the filmmaker Stephen J. Shaw. In response to concerns voiced on campus, she criticized students as having thrown their rattle out of the pram. The documentary is Shaw's first project. Do you know something about these projects, and what does the filmmaker say about that, if you know anything?
Yeah, I have shared a brief couple of messages with him on Twitter actually, and I know that he is being invited to talk to various media outlets. I haven't managed to keep up with that because this all came out a day or two ago, and I've been sorry, I've just noticed I've still got that banner under my name. Stunning and Brave trademark. I found that really funny last week. Still do,
It's
clearly.
so funny. So funny.
And yeah, and I mean, you know, he's a reasonable, rational human being who has the same response as reasonable, rational human beings, I think. And it is, you know, it just says everything about these students and their feminist ideology, because you know, and actually I did, because I wondered when you were reading that whether, because it, you know, it kind of made reference to the host and the organizer, but it did actually gender her, because the person, the organizer, is a woman. And
Right.
so you know, these feminists, they are not interested in letting this woman organize her own event, and you know, they are not interested in letting the women who wanted to share their personal stories, their lived experiences with Stephen, have their platform to tell people about what they've lived. And yeah, they just are very offended that anyone might want to suggest that young, high-achieving women may want to consider their life plans and whether it will involve children, and if it's going to involve children, how they might want to plan their futures. It's remarkable, you know, and it shows such a lack of respect for women. It's like the sort of pro-abortion lobby who are always going on about how women are perfectly capable of choosing whether or not it's right for them to kill their babies. And it's like, okay, if true, why is it not okay for women to be exposed to both sides of the argument? Because they're always trying to, they have to push anyone like away, they've got the buffer zones around abortion clinics so that no one can hand them a leaflet that gives them pause for thought and tells them what support is available if they choose to keep the baby, because there is support available. So I really struggle to see how it is respectful of women's agency and their ability to make decisions, to say that they can't have all the information they need to do so.
Yeah. I had this just last week. I run a business where a lot of tourists come in, and in 1 week I had 3 couples coming into my shop, and they were all 3 couples. They were stunningly good looking. They were in their mid-30s. They had it all. They were well educated. They were sporty. They were outdoorsy. They had relatively, as far as I could tell, good values. And I looked at them and I was like, oh my God, their children, they're going to be amazing. And none of them wanted children. None of them wanted children. And the reason was just, well, we just want to focus on ourselves. Or they didn't even have the excuse, oh, the world is so dark and we don't want to bring children into this world. No, it was just, well, life is good as it is. We don't need to share it with children, I assume. It was incredibly sad. And especially because, as I said, they had it all. They were the perfect breeding ground for children. And especially with people that say, oh, the world is so dark and should we bring children into this dark world? I'm like, you're the right people to actually bring children in the world because you care. Make more children and raise them with positive values, caring about the environment and all of that. But yeah, it's bad. In my village, there are currently 2 children in the primary school. 2. Yeah,
Oh,
our
wow.
yeah, our
What's
village is
the
kind of flying.
population?
Pardon?
What is
300.
300, and there's two primary school age children?
Yes. Yeah. And one of them is only here for a couple of months. So she just came here
Oh my
for a
God.
seasonal job. And so there's really just one local kid in school.
Oh.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it gives
An awesome like biography, autobiography about their school life. That'd be mad to read.
Yeah. When I first moved here, there were, I think, between 12 and 15 children going to school. So within the last 10 years, it went down from 15 children or 12 children roughly to 1 child. So that's not good.
Is it people moving for work? Is it like increases in house prices from tourists who only live there in the summer? What's happening?
Yes. Well, obviously, people have less children. Increase in house prices, exactly as you said. It's very difficult for young couples to find any housing, and couples that have children, once the children are like 6, 7 years old, they want to offer the children more than is offered here. And I think there is not enough campaigning highlighting the positive aspects of living in the highlands compared to the cities. Okay, so you can't bring your children to karate training at 1 o'clock and their piano lesson at 3 o'clock, but they have the beaches, they can drive around on quads, they can experience nature. There are a lot of things going on in the area, but there's also not a lot of community amongst the parents, I would say. But we're trying to change that. So as I know, you're gonna attend the screening of this movie, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm looking forward to watching the movie.
Yeah, I'll get some links shared in the comments once this is all over. But there are tickets available to the public. It's on Friday the 12th. The only slightly irritating thing, because the tickets are free as well, you're welcome to leave a donation if you like, but yeah, there's going to be the film followed by the Q&A, so it should be a really good event. And also, I mean, obviously there is a fairly high likelihood that the Cambridge University Noisy Twat Society will be in attendance, like they were for Mike and my speeches at the university.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Some pans and milkshakes, which is always interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there is rail strikes that day, so I'm gonna like try and work out how I'm gonna get there. I've got the ticket, and there must be a way, perhaps a coach or something, but that's something to bear in mind before you go and book up all the free tickets.
Yeah. The link to the event is underneath the video, so I already put the link down. Also, the link to all the articles that we share today is also in the description of the video. We would also ask everybody to like and share the video so that we get more viewers every week. That would be great. By the way, one last thing. While the feminists are threatening to protest this movie, the trans activists are currently protesting in Edinburgh University because they wanted to screen the movie Adult Human Female, and obviously the trans activists couldn't let that happen. And all the feminists, they're like, "Oh, but we care so much about free speech and diversity of opinion and universities." It's quite funny, to be honest. Obviously, I'm on the side of the feminists in that regard because all opinions should be available on campus, but it's just very ridiculous that the feminists are now being silenced and oppressed in Edinburgh, and they protest to oppress other voices on Cambridge.
Yeah, it is a little bit difficult in it not to feel a touch of Schadenfreude in these instances.
Oh, very much, very much. But yeah, and I find it ridiculous that the feminists don't see that the trans activists are, well, part of their side, part of their group, and that they just copy the exact same, or that they use the exact same techniques that the feminists have been using for decades.
Well, yeah, so, and I mean, also the theory, like, you know, for decades, feminists have been telling us that there is no difference between men and women, and it's all just cultural and it's all performative. What was it I saw? Oh no, I just had there's a really recent example of like the same sort of oh, that's right, the bloody footballers. So it was on the Justice for Men and Boys blog. It popped up. There's some story that I don't know what all the boards are called, but some people to do with football are trying to hawk out the Women's World Cup to TV like networks, and they're very aggrieved that the Women's World Cup is not as valuable as the Men's World Cup financially, and so they're like calling all of the networks terrible misogynists, and saying that the women are worth just as much as the men, you know, which in many regards they are, but it's not such a good game, you know. And the TV networks, I'm sure, would not pay the same for male, heavy catwalk shows and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, people like to look at men doing some things and women doing some things, and there are very valid reasons for both.
Exactly. So let's dive into the next topic, and that is MP Stella Creasy says harasser subjected her to social services investigation after online troll thought he was entitled to the view that her children should be taken into care. A senior female MP was forced to endure a social services investigation after an online troll thought he was entitled to the view that her children should be put into care. Stella Creasy, 46, was told by police that they would not impose criminal sanctions on her tormentor, who pounded her office with emails because he disagreed with her political views. Is it Leicester or Leicestershire? Leicestershire? Leicestershire. Leicestershire police said the harasser had legitimate rights to make a social services referral because he disagreed with Creasy's opinions on misogyny, even though he lacked evidence against the MP. Creasy, the Labour MP for Walthamstow in East London, told The Times that the police's response gave other trolls the green light to target the families of those in the public eye merely because they don't like them. Creasy's harasser used the alias Lance Jones and carried no personal connection to the politician or her children. He complained about the MP's campaigns against misogyny and violence against women, as well as her call to be allowed to take her breastfed baby into the voting chamber. Creasy was made the subject of a safeguarding review by her local council in November. Although the politician was cleared and her tormentor was referred to police over harassment concerns, the council has been legally stopped from expunging the complaint about her anti-man views from its official record. Did you want to say something? I mean, I can stop here, but anyways.
Yeah, I mean, many thoughts are coming up. So, with regards to, the harassment of him emailing her office, I just think that is completely ridiculous. With regards to social services thinking that it is, a legitimate complaint for someone, if someone who has never had any physical contact, never seen her with her children, to be making complaints to social services. I mean, saying that, I suppose you could say, for example, you saw a video online of someone miles away beating their child, then you could legitimately make a complaint. But, the content of the complaint is that she has very bad opinions, and so she needs to be investigated as an unfit parent. Why are social services doing that? We've all seen, every couple of years, it's flagged up, some baby has been beaten to death because, and then, we get all this, well, social services are so overstretched, and it's like, yeah, that is absolutely true, but they also do. And, it irritated me when Stella Creasy says that, people have the green light to report people in the public eye to social services, because this does happen, that people report others to the social services as unfit parents because of ideological differences. I mentioned to you this couple who's, I mean, they had foster children, and it was foster children who were taken away from them because they had voted UKIP. I pulled up the articles. That was 2012. But, these stories crop up, and it is absolutely unacceptable.
Or look at the witch hunt against Tommy Voldemort. I can't say his word because then we are being demonetized. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
well,
I
Tommy, you know I'm talking
I
about.
know who you're talking
The,
about, but what he was reported to police as
yeah,
an
with his
unfit.
children,
Sorry,
yeah,
please.
they tried to take his children away. I mean, they tried everything to destroy his
Yeah,
life, really.
and I mean, elsewhere in our dying civilization, we have these stories about um, parents being separated from their children. I mean, there's a fella in Canada who's in jail because he didn't consent to his minor aged child transitioning sex, you know? And it's a really dangerous, awful precedent, and we don't want to go down this road. It is, Lance Jones is an absolute piece of shit for making this report. I fully agree with him. I have massive problems with Stella Creasy's opinions. Yeah, and however, are her children better off with their mother, even if she is an idiot? 100% they are, yeah.
Mm. I agree. I think my views on Lance are potentially a little bit milder because while I wouldn't do it, it shows the other side how obstructive and destructive the current system is, where everybody can just accuse anybody of everything. Um, it's I think it's a similar case with the sexual assault article that we talked about in the beginning. It's like, okay, do we want a culture where there are less allegations, or do we want a culture where there are more allegations, just gender equal? And I
No, I
think there
mean,
is an argument to be made that
I
maybe first everybody has to. I'm not so no. I'm not defending it. I'm not defending it. Not at all. But um, the system is being used by the other side nonstop. Look at all the mothers that make false allegations of domestic abuse to get free legal advice in the family court. Should we tell men to do exactly the same thing? I'm completely against it. I'm completely against it. But will the system change if that doesn't happen? I don't think so. And again, that doesn't mean that I'm in favor of it. I see both sides. I see both sides.
I don't know. I just like it's difficult
Doesn't
for
make it
me.
okay. Doesn't make it
It's
okay.
difficult for me to accept that it is ever right to make that threat. Like when you threaten people's right to, or when you threaten people's ability to perform their responsibilities as parents, that is so deeply affecting. It is awful. And if it goes kind of to any
I
point where
completely agree.
sometimes there are children who are actually taken away, um, or sometimes what if it goes through the process to the point where the children themselves have to understand that there is a danger they are going to not be able to be raised by their parents. Like, that is too traumatic for children. Like, they shouldn't have to bear that. So
Now,
yeah. Mm.
oh, now, let's say a person, if a person who like continuously campaigns against the recognition of parental alienation becomes a victim of parental alienation. Now, nobody would be happy about it, but you can argue now you know that it's real. Could you please change your position on this, because it affects you personally? There is, and again, I don't. Do I like instant karma? No. Do I like instant karma? No. But the people that create a system that victimizes certain people, if these people become victims of the system, there is a certain amount of poetic justice about it. I wouldn't do it, but I see the poetry in it.
Ooh, yes. Yeah.
But we both agree that all of this should be done away with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think let's make it very clear. We are completely against making allegations. First of all, absolutely never false allegation. That is completely wrong. Every lie is reporting people, even if you think they have the wrong opinions. Always ask yourself, how would you feel about that? Do you want to be targeted by it? If you don't want to be targeted by something like that, maybe you shouldn't do it yourself. And that goes for both sides.
Amen.
You agree?
I absolutely agree.
Amen. Okay, so let's go into the last topic for tonight. And we stay on topic in some ways. And am I sharing it? Oh yeah, no.
You are sharing it.
So the headline reads, "Man denies harassing prominent." Brilliant. Sorry, there is a bit of a time delay. I apologize. What did you want to say?
No, go on, read the title and then I'll jump in and say a word and then you can continue because you're the expert on this story in the call.
Okay, I will. The headline reads, "Man denies harassing prominent barrister on social media." And I don't have to read the article out. I can just tell you guys what the whole thing is about, because I'm quite familiar with the case now.
Yeah. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say, because I know you have more information that I have not been party to yet. But I would just like to note before you begin that the prominent barrister is Charlotte Proudman, who came to prominence in the public eye because a man said that she looked nice on her LinkedIn picture and she felt violated or something. But I have taken some interest in checking out what she has to say from time to time, and she consists.
Oh my God! I completely forgot that was her.
Yeah. She consistently has an absolute disdain for the law and also for the legal system. So, you know, she was very actively, as a Cambridge alumni, celebrating the, what do they call it? It's not a general assault, is it? Common assault. The common assault of Mike Buchanan when he was milkshaked, right? When we went to talk at Cambridge. Charlotte Proudman, as a barrister, a representative of the law, was celebrating that publicly on Twitter. And it's like, is that allowed? Like, I would have thought that would have, you know, been the kind of behavior that is not acceptable for a barrister. But she also has massive issues, you know, every time a man is exonerated, essentially, like, for example, Johnny Depp in the case with Amber Heard. She just, you know, consistently refuses to accept the verdict. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, that's a more grey area, I think, because
Yeah.
obviously there are miscarriages
So
of justice, but still.
so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the case, and the viewers, of course, as well. So Charlotte Proudman, you gave a great introduction. She has a huge disdain for men, and she promotes law that is, per definition, gender bias. So she wants a feminist law that only highlights female victims and male perpetrators, and she even goes as far as advocating for female perpetrators, like female murderers, to be pretty much being exonerated, because it's always the man who caused it in the end. And her I think it's fair to say that her views are often intentionally provocative. And she is very active on Twitter, and she thrives on the negative interactions that she has, and she uses them. And she's like, "Oh, look, all the abuse that I receive." Now, she there was a MRA, a men's rights activist, who responded to her tweets. Like, she would tweet something and he would reply just with one reply. And then there was one day where she promoted something from a radical feminist group in India. It's a group of vigilantes who beat up men who they think are rapists or domestic abusers, and they beat them up. So they promote violence outside the law. And Charlotte Proudman shared that in a positive way and said, "Oh, that's good, that's great." And then the MRA in question sent a tweet that was, well, not great. First, I think the introduction of the tweet was absolutely fine, and he said men's rights activists are being targeted, are being harassed, are being threatened with violence again and again and again. This ends now. We should fight fire with fire, and I'm looking forward to your last breath. So, not great. Yeah, so not great. The It has to be said that the person in question suffers from PTSD from different sources, and yeah, so that's where we are. First, Charlotte Proudman accused him of like, I don't know the right term, something like bad communications under the bad
Malicious.
communication malicious communications
And
act,
they're all about them.
and then she increased that to harassment. Now, obviously, for harassment, there have to be several instances, and so she brought up another instance, which was absolutely ridiculous. I looked into it and I was like, come on, that's absolutely nothing. And at the moment, this MRA doesn't have legal representation. He fears that whoever he chooses will be feminist indoctrinated, so he was worried that he cannot get fair and positive legal representation. And Gender Parity UK, our organization, we reached out to him, and so we are trying to help him finding somebody, and some other MRAs are also trying to support him, and he's very thankful for that. Obviously, I don't want to share too much about it. I only know a little bit about the case, and I also don't want to share too much. Now, I I think that what he wrote wasn't okay, and he agrees. He was not in a good state in that moment, but it was not a threat to her life, and it
No,
was.
no.
And also, I would say she promoted violence against non-convicted people. So she uh,
Yeah.
Charlotte
And
Proudman, she promoted vigilante violence, and pretty much he said, well, if you promote vigilante violence, then maybe there should be vigilante violence against you, which isn't great, but
no,
yeah.
no. And you know, there are this kind of these interactions happen often. I've certainly received my fair share of kind of threats to my physical safety, none of
Yes,
which I have
sorry, yeah,
were
he received previous to his tweet, he received a lot of abuse and threats of violence from the feminist side. So
yeah.
I hope that's
Actually,
gonna help him in
in
court.
this instance, he is actually responding in kind. It's not even like it's from nowhere. But I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the point at which the law should step in is when there is reason to believe that this is a credible threat of violence. You know, I have brushed a million such comments, you know, off because this person doesn't know where I am. You know, they're like a faceless stranger who I have no reason to believe has what it would take to actually act violently. So yeah, I think it's completely inappropriate for things like this to be elevated to the law. And with regards to harassment, and yeah, I mean, it can be the legislation. There is some precedent for it being used in quite the biased fashion, you know, from a reasonable person kind of standpoint. It's like he's replying to what she puts on a public forum. That's what she goes onto the public forum for, you know? She absolutely likes to provoke people.
Mm.
It's not like he is um, in her community following her around. He's not contacting workplace and family and blah, 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 you know? And so I think it would be entirely immoral and wrong for him to be convicted of harassment over it. I think it wouldn't be without precedent for him to be convicted of harassment for it, especially given her prominence, her money, the fact that she, I'm sure, knows many very good barristers if she's not going to represent herself, you know, and she's very pretty and she can probably cry it, you know, will.
Yeah, there certain other like barristers and lawyers have in the past stepped away from her and criticized her. So there are some positive aspects about this case. Obviously, misandry and man hate. I mean, that it's very easy to highlight that she's looking for reactions and that she does discriminate against men. Yeah, we'll
Oh,
see where this case is going. We'll keep you updated. Yeah.
Philip, thinking of it, I wonder if
Yes.
it's only in the malicious communications. Because I know with malicious communications, you know, it can be like these virtual interactions, but the victim has to tell the perpetrator to stop clearly, like, you know, you need to stop with this. And they have to, you know, show that they have been active in trying to prevent the situation from continuing and escalating. I don't know if that's the same with
As far
harassment.
as I know, she didn't even.
Yeah.
As far as I know, she didn't even block him.
So, you know, I mean, that's the
So,
thing. It's
so
like, have responsibility, people. Like, if you're being upset
no,
online,
absolutely.
which, by the way, she absolutely isn't, because she's been, you know, she incites it on purpose, and she's been in the public eye. She knows how to deal with this stuff. You know, it's different when it's like some 12-year-old girl on TikTok who suddenly gets a load of abuse. You know, of course they're upset by it. But when you're an adult and you've learned that the only opinions that matter are the people who you love and admire, or, you know, other people on the occasion that their criticisms of you are correct, you know, then be upset. But yeah,
I would say that she is. I would say that she is actively trying to receive abuse so that she can use the abuse to grow her following and to highlight her case.
Absolutely.
So we're at the end of today's stream. We thank everybody for watching. Again, please like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. You can follow MRAdio. I think we have our own Twitter handle. Just let me check what our name is. You can promote yourself. Now is the time, Elizabeth.
Go on. I am at anti_fembot. I was going to spell it out, but I've just noticed it's on the screen, isn't it?
Exactly. And from MRAdio, it's at MRAdio UK. And you can also follow me. That's Philip Tanzer1. That's Philip Tanzer1. And now we're gonna end the show every week.
Wait.
With a prayer.
Yeah. Jumping the gun, bro.
Okay.
Our friend in academia, our friend in masculinities, Eric Anderson, has just this evening published a pre-proof paper, which is the impact of feminist approaches on masculinity scholarship. So he has just been looking through. It will be published. Where's it being published again? Current Opinion in Psychology. So yeah, he's just comparing the output of journals, so papers on masculinity published in journals that are explicitly aligned with critical feminism, broadly aligned with feminism, or not aligned with feminism at all, and what the kind of standard, what the standard of scholarship is, but also, you know, what the focus is in the papers that are published in these. And, you know, as you can imagine, the TLDR essentially is that journals that are explicitly aligned with feminism have no space for discussing men's experiences, and they have no space for discussing anything positive that men might contribute to our societies. He does also mention, although I mean, this literally, I printed this out the moment I saw it and had about 10 minutes to skim it before the show. So I haven't read it all, and I haven't found much about this in the body of the text, but in the abstract, he does mention a historical shift from masculinity making to categorical interests of men. And he
just a second. How do you feel about leading with that story for next week? I would love to, because I would love to hear more about that. And I think if you give it a good read and you can tell us all about it, that would be amazing.
I mean, the link, I have retweeted the link to it so people can read it if they go to my Twitter. Perfect. It's my last tweet.
Okay. We end every episode with a little prayer. People who believe in God can pray with us. Everybody else can listen or leave the podcast, whatever floats your boat. In any case, see you next week. Elizabeth, would you like to start?
I don't know. Do you want to start?
I can start. That's fine.
Go on, you start.
Heavenly Father, I would like to pray for our movement. I would ask you to guide us in love and make sure that the men's movement, the men's equality movement, is guided by love and respect and righteousness. I would ask you to protect David. That's the MRA who has to go to court against Charlotte Proudman. I would ask you to protect him and to make sure that he has a positive outcome. I would also ask you to shine your light over Dr. Proudman and reduce her hate towards men and lead her into a positive direction. And I ask you to bless all those who listen to this podcast, and I would ask you to bless us to have a positive impact through this podcast. And now I hand the microphone over to Elizabeth.
Okay. So, Heavenly Father, I would like to ask you to share the divine inspiration that you shared with St. Thomas Aquinas so that we might pursue the meeting of reason and faith in our society so that we can progress together in peace and divinity. Amen.
Amen. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. See you next week. It was a pleasure.